Hey Ashley, thanks for joining us today on one of our demo times. Very excited to hear all about, not just hear, but see Flyr Hospitality insights, and you'll give us and you'll be demonstrating that and some of the key elements a little later. But before we get into that, first of all, as I say, welcome. How are things with you? Busy times, I would imagine.
Oh, thank you so much, Trevor. Very exciting to be here as well and to be able to show the product, talk about all things hotels, one of my favorite subjects. Things are good. Things are busy. Last year was an incredible year. This year is planning to be somehow even busier. So it's just about trying to keep up, keep all the balls in the air going, not letting a single one drop.
And all you need is a conversation with me, and then demonstrating a product. That's all. That's all you need to interrupt your day, isn't it? And we can get a discussion going.
I mean, anytime I can actually walk through the product and demo the product makes me pretty happy. I'm in it all day, every day.
Well, look, before we get into looking at what it's all about, and I know you've got some ways in which you want to be able to demo that and take us through, not like a real life scenario, but kind of what are some of the issues that people are
Yeah.
handling. But as I say, before we get into the actual demo piece, I'm always keen in one of these demo discussions to actually understand, first of all, these things don't get developed without a reason. There are
Yes.
there are pain points that are being experienced that you as an organization are looking to resolve for your clients. So can you just talk us through those pain points first and foremost? What were you seeing that led to this being of value?
Yes, absolutely. So essentially, from the different user groups that we have, there are several different problems or pain points throughout the process of data analysis. And as a business intelligence product, of which Insights is, it's at the first and foremost a data analysis product and tool and
Hmm.
facilitator, and being able to access data that may live across different systems. And if you are a larger portfolio, also across different systems, say property management systems,
Okay.
and being able to very easily normalize and standardize that data as a very fundamental problem
Hmm.
isn't necessarily achieved across every product out there. That happens at the time of onboarding. Then once you have your data, then it's a matter of, okay, I need to put this together. And for some of the dorms out there, building a dashboard isn't necessarily something that comes very naturally to people.
Yeah.
Or you might be able to do data analysis to be able to answer a question for you. But what that ends up looking like is an Excel spreadsheet with pivot table galore on a single table. And it's not, you might get what you need out of it, but as soon as it comes time to share that information or that insight or be able to speak to it with the data backing up your assertions, you don't really have those pictorials readily accessible to you.
Yeah.
So it really just breaks down in a few different ways. The most fundamental is the data access. The next is actually turning that access into the insights in a way that is seamless and frictionless,
Hmm.
and then provide something clear that then you can communicate out. More often than not, as a director of revenue, it's not enough to get insights yourself or to analyze and interpret trends to be able to shape or validate your strategy,
Yep.
but you then actually need to be able to speak to someone about it and bring them along for the ride. And those, shockingly, are so many critical steps of friction, so many critical problems in the entire space of what a director of revenue does every day, or a regional director, or being able to answer questions at the corporate level, that
Hmm.
the need for this product is, I mean, it essentially speaks to itself in being able to address each of those. But it's been shocking speaking to many of our users and consumers that have migrated off other products or are still going into the transformative space of using a BI product instead of the dreaded just spreadsheet format.
And I think, I mean, one of the issues that we often hear when we're talking to our community as well, and we touched on this when we were first discussing structuring this call and what we want to cover, and it was not so much I need. Yes, some people are comfortable with numbers, some people are comfortable with images, but at the end of the day, the question was less about what I'm looking to do is to buy a dashboard that presents me the data. I'm actually looking for something that answers some of my questions. So it's kind of not. It's actually a usable tool. Was that the kind of things that you guys were hearing and seeing? How has that shaped the product?
Yeah, absolutely. Insights is a self-service business intelligence product, so it's
Hmm.
not utilizing purely web application BI, which basically just means that the way that you can access data is very prescribed. You only have certain filters. Those filters only have certain values. There's only certain ways that you can adjust or interact with the data as it's being presented to you.
Yeah.
As self-service, then you work more in the space of the Tableaus or the Lookers of the world where you are designing dashboards for usage, but we've it ends up becoming multi-pronged depending on the type of enterprise level organization you're speaking with. For a
Hmm.
very larger enterprise level organization, then they want to be a little bit more on brand with the type of reporting they've been using. And
Yeah.
that's very mindful as well, because we have people who are transitioning off more static spreadsheets and then onto something. So as part of that migration platform, as we get them closer and closer to more um, ad hoc reporting or
Hmm.
creating things on the fly that are only then committed to dashboards if it's a repeated analysis
Yeah.
or it needs to be shared out. As part of that transformation of going from the static spreadsheets to something much more dynamic and flexible, then they can actually create and customize and build content around their own workflows. So we have templates that are on the central workflows that provide an opportunity to understand what is possible to do within our product. It
Yeah.
also affords a springboard and a jumping off point, because that also can be very paralyzing for people going into a self-service BI product.
Hmm.
There's almost too much freedom.
Yep.
So where we offer the templates, that also allows people who are more of the power users within these larger organizations, if they want to assume the responsibility of creating things that are on brand within their organization to help with the transformation and that migration onto dynamicism, then they have the flexibility of doing that. If you're a smaller organization and you want to be able to capitalize on just going straight for hit the ground running, then we offer templates that can get them facilitated in doing that as well. So you really do have the flexibility across all of these different uh, features and tools that we have available, depending on what your comfort level is
Yep.
and also what your organizational ambitions are.
I got you. One of the things also that sometimes crops up is that the use they may be quite familiar with a BI tool. The data's being presented to them in a way that they want, and they're interacting with it. But sometimes it's kind of at one layer, maybe two layers, but there's often follow up questions that come from, so they ask one question, back comes an answer, and then yeah, exactly. And I mean, how I mean, that must be challenging itself, both from a user point of view, because I mean, you've been on this side of the fence as well. I mean, we'll get to your background in a minute before we go into the demo side of things, because there's a lot of relatability there. But I mean, these are things, this multi-level, this one answer poses another question, and the need to be able to roll with that is often a challenge that is seen within some of these solutions.
Absolutely. And different stakeholder groups are also going to have different challenges and questions coming out of the same data. You can show the
Hmm.
same spreadsheet to three different people at three different levels in the organization. They're all going to have probably not too different of a question, but variations of the same question depending on what they need or what their
Yep.
needs are that they're bringing to it. So
Yep.
being able to support each of them and then on their independent analytical journeys, being able to support follow-up questions and being able to marry that within the same location. Yeah, that was a challenge. Luckily, there's some new technological components available out there that make this a lot more fluid, a lot more seamless of an experience. So there's
Hmm.
minimal friction when you're interacting. And that's something we'll show on the demo as well. But
Yeah.
absolutely, that's something to actually support and service within the product. It's a requirement at this stage. It's always existed and it hasn't quite been met elsewhere.
Right. And you mentioned different stakeholders and different
Mm.
viewpoints. I mean, often this is sitting within, say, the revenue management team, but as the whole revenue, sales, marketing roles are evolving, and the commercial team is something that's really come to the forefront over the last year, 2 years, in essence. How, I mean, one of the challenges, I guess, is being able to communicate a single set of data but in a way that's appropriate for a GM, for someone in the sales team, for someone in revenue management. I mean, that in a way, it almost needs to have an inbuilt translation that can present that. I mean, that's a consistent challenge that seems to exist.
Absolutely, or an agentic framework that can sit underneath. So essentially, you're able to ask questions in the way that you would ask questions of another person. So
Hmm.
you are able to ferry those conversations through utilizing the data at your fingertips. So you need to be able to think like a computer, but talk like a human.
Yeah, got you. Okay, let's before we get into the demo, just I mean, obviously we've welcomed you to this conversation, but
Thank you.
just kind of position where you sit within Flyr Hospitality, what your role is, and a bit about your background, because that'll then help to identify why you are where you are, shall we say?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm still trying to ask that question. Who are we? Where did we come from? Um, so I started my career in hotels and hospitality. Um, Keeping in mind this is the 2000s, so
Mhm.
the idea of where tech is now was not
Oh, well,
necessarily
yeah.
crystallized to non-technical folk. So something very tangible like hotels where you actually visit in the hospitality industry was something that was very well understood. I'd gotten my degree in that, and so I pursued it with a management training program,
Okay.
which exposed you to the operational side of things.
Hmm.
So housekeeping, front desk, all of that was still of interest. The side of revenue management was certainly more appealing. It was much more of a strategic focus. So the experience of upselling in front desk is what kind of moved me in that direction. I pursued into reservations and revenue and hotels. And then I decided to take a step back and go into OTAs. So I thought that was a really interesting industry.
Hmm.
Um, the tradition of hotels, although I was passionate about the industry, having more of an innovative aspect to it, which OTAs at the time were offering, was particularly appealing. And then, of course, I wanted to migrate into the startup world because I was with a big OTA at the time. And now I wanted to try something smaller. And then I realized, ooh, that might not be the right fit. But the tech side of it was. So the innovation and technological aspect of the OTA world was. And so that's where the idea of product management crystallized. And so I'd gotten my master's in management of complex projects here in the UK, but that kind of gave me the language and the understanding of understanding systems and systems
Yeah.
engineering thinking and risk and reliability and all of these elements that I do conceptually kind of, but not as much. And then that went into product and I wanted to pursue product management, which
Hmm.
for people who aren't in tech, it's kind of like being the dorm of a particular product.
Yeah.
You get everyone shouting at you. And if you're doing things right, no one will tell you you did a great job. But if you're doing things wrong, they'll let
Oh
you
boy,
know. You
yeah,
live on feedback.
yeah.
And you work with different stakeholders and you're constantly engaging with people and you're hearing how problems you can develop solutions to solve. And so it becomes a very tangible and beneficial relationship. My product is Insights. So we are developing a product that solves all of your data analytics problems within hotels. So really full circle of going from hotels using different products in the tech space to actually taking the ownership of one, and which I take very seriously. I'm very fond of, and get to speak to you and all kinds of other people about the market and the industry and all of the great things we have going on.
Very good. Well, thank you for the introduction. And let's use that as the segue to actually see this product that you have been involved developing. So let's do
Wonderful.
let's do a bit of screen sharing.
Welcome to Insights. Um, it is very exciting. We have designed this very specifically to not just organize content through reporting and just grouping a bunch of reporting together, but that we actually wanted to follow workflows.
Hmm.
We all know that if you work in hotels, and particularly if you work in revenue or the commercial side of things, dashboards are your life. But it isn't just enough to look at numbers, it's
Yeah.
actually to ask questions.
Yeah.
And you want to be
Exactly.
able to ground that in something that you encounter on a daily basis.
Hmm.
So for us, it usually isn't just the first question, it's where you go and how do you get to what you need to get to.
Makes a lot of sense.
Now,
And how
I
do you
would
how do you
be,
want to? Yeah. How do you want to? How are you going to tee this up? How do you want to show us through this demonstration?
yeah, I thought essentially what, if you've worked in revenue, that or any one related to daily operations. The question that you ask on a daily basis in the morning is, what was my pickup? So I figured that would be a great point. Everyone can relate to that question being asked of them, or them wanting to ask other people, or everyone having, with the first couple hours of your day focused on pickup.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because a lot of what you're asking for pickup is you're wanting to validate strategy or decisions. And this is your way of being able to validate if what you're doing is actually realizing.
Gotcha.
Um, so in going into your pickup report, also some of the friction points that we came across before is that you've been looking at a static dashboard. This happens, the dashboards typically haven't changed like 15 years.
Yep.
And you might be looking at a giant spreadsheet, or you might be looking at some KPI cards like we are here before. This isn't completely revolutionary. This is supporting people, the way people have been asking questions about pickup for a while.
Okay.
What is different is that you can, just like we were speaking to before, actually start engaging and interacting with the data that you have in front of you.
I'm with you. So you're going to feel comfortable when you first see it that it looks like what you're familiar with.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
then you can dig a little bit deeper, different ways of interacting. Again, nothing too revolutionary on the filters. Obviously, there's just a lot of flexibility there. But where it really starts picking up steam and where people naturally want to go to, but you can't on just a static spreadsheet, um, is start asking questions and getting answers and having that be a dynamic engagement with what you have in front of you.
Okay.
So in this example, I might be focused on in the month for the month. So I might be looking at my February. I see, unsurprisingly, in the month for the month, a fair amount of cancellations. I see some pickup, and I might even already want to go into the individual bookings that are underlying these. Depending on the size of your property, that is very much something that you might want to actually see, is that booking level detail. And in my case, let's say I'm assuming the role of the director of revenue.
Yep.
I was working with the BT manager when we were setting strategy, and they wanted to target some specific accounts for the month of February to be able to drive business. So already I'm kind of going to catch my attention there. I see Microsoft is kind of leading the way here. And I might then start kind of wondering, okay, well, we have seen some pickup. This is only representative of yesterday, focused on Microsoft, but maybe I want to understand my pickup for the month of February overall. How has that been split across the different segmentation mix that I might have?
Yep.
So if I click on my little button there, that brings up my dashboard AI assistant. And these are those kind of
A lot of people
natural.
give them a name. Does yours have a name, or is it just the assistant? Or
Well,
can you name it yourself? I guess
we have some internal names, but
maybe we'll leave them there.
exactly. But we like to. I still try and keep in mind in working with hotels, we want to be sensitive of the traditionalists where you don't want to throw in something flashy. So we keep it cheeky by having the kind of emoji, but then also the language is a little bit more neutral with the dashboard assistant.
Gotcha.
But if you refer to it as any other name, he, she, they will probably respond. But this is allowing you to essentially layer on top of the data that is underlying this entire dashboard and then be able to fluidly ask questions across the dashboard. There are many different tiles that make it up, and there are so many more compelling ways that you can be interacting with different filters we have at the top. But again, perhaps I'm pressed for time. I'm going into my my daily stand-up, and I just already want to have some of this information at my disposal. I've already focused on the corporate transient, so the BT manager is already going to be at the stand-up. Maybe I can ask that question in advance.
Yep.
So I might ask something like, what have been my corporate transient rate plan mix for this month for the flagship Austin? Specifying my property because I have access to the entire portfolio, but in my stand-up, I'm only going to go into the one property.
Yep.
So essentially what I'm going to try and ask it here, and what I'm trying to validate my understanding of is, although February was targeted for some specific accounts, it was McKinsey specifically, I want to see what the diversity in the mix of my corporate company production has been, so I can then start understanding if that strategy is working, and also within the global, more of a larger context, is it potentially at the sacrifice of others? Gotcha. And I can see here that the same 3 rate plans that I saw picking up for February, if I'm looking at the entire month, state date of this month, I can see there's still only those 3 rate plans that are producing. That
Hmm.
isn't quite aligning with my expectations. So I'm going to
Okay.
go to the BT manager and say, you know what, we're not seeing a lot of diversity in this pickup. All the actions that you've put into McKinsey, is that at sacrifice of other accounts? Theoretically, I might already know that. Is this aligning with your expectations? What's going on in the market? So I'm going to try and contextualize a little bit more of this answer. But already I'm able to validate the strategy,
Yep.
and I'm able to align priorities with one of my other stakeholders.
Very interesting.
We think so too. And you can ask all kinds of other follow-up questions. The sky is the limit for pickup. You're not limited by the data that's in this dashboard. It's just more of a providing you context to be able to shape responses so you get a little bit more efficient responses. But you could ask anything else, like what's going on in the market, what's rate shopping data, could you cross-reference for this if you're looking into transient production. So a lot of fluidity, a lot of framework with all of the data that we painstakingly organized and make accessible to everyone's fingertips.
Very good. And as you say, I like that that functionality to be able to ask that question and get that summation. I mean, we're all used to that now. When we go onto Google and you get the little short search at the top, or you go and use ChatGPT and others are available. Of course, it that's become a lot more familiar than it would have been a year 18 months ago. So that feels very natural, and that ability to follow on is a very interesting feature.
Yeah, absolutely. There's different ways if you were to schedule this dashboard as more of a static piece,
Hmm.
static artifact, then you can include summaries within the dashboard. So that
Okay.
works. But since we were also talking about previously being able to speak to different stakeholder groups by looking at the same data, another question might be if I were to even remove this property, and I'd say, as someone at corporate, help me understand the larger trends of my pickup.
Hmm.
Then it'll be able to speak to that kind of question as well. So I'm going to say, let's ask me a lot of extra questions. Always good to validate. You never want to
Yep.
assume. You know what they say about
Absolutely.
assuming.
Yeah, but
Um,
that in itself is interesting, isn't it? Because it's kind of saying, yeah, okay, I can, but what do you actually, what period, or it pose you some other things. So it's like the prompts that normally you have to think through. I want this, I want this, I want this, and then it'll give you the answer. It won't just spew out an answer if there are some parameters that it feels are essential to maybe consider.
Absolutely. That development came very much out of feedback that we get from people who are interacting with the product, where they were saying, you know what, we asked a question, we didn't get an answer back, and then I would comb through it and say, well, me as the human, I didn't know what you were talking about. I had, to your
Sure.
point,
Yeah,
follow
yeah,
up
yeah,
questions just like I would any other human.
yeah.
So yeah, it became kind of an implied necessity. But again, as somebody in, say, a corporate higher level threshold, then you'll have a bunch of data, pretty pictures being brought through as well. So the visual component is there, but then you can have the key portfolio insights written at that higher level aggregate. So it can give very clear indications. This one's a significant concern. Um, so it's going to highlight then what your attention is. If you're somebody who's at the property level, you might be asking much more specific questions, kind of like I did just previously about your corporate transient production for a specific month. So again, same conversation, same dashboard AI assistant, but being able to speak to the different stakeholder groups that you have interacting, and all of that is still based on the same data.
Yes, and that's the thing, isn't it? You've got that core set of data, but I mean the interaction. If I'm the DORM, I'm coming in. The type of question I'm going to ask of that data will not be very different, but it's likely to be different or more targeted than maybe if I'm the
Yes.
GM coming in first thing in the morning and I just want to have a quick look at the numbers, and then I might look at them and pose a slightly different question. And that seems to be the beauty, that it will generally just respond and reflect. That's what's great about it, is the question it just answers the question that you're asking, and the ability to not have to think through all the prompts that you need to provide, because it is that almost two-way conversation to some degree.
Yeah, exactly. Two-way conversation. One of them's with a machine, for lack of a better
I
term.
know,
But
which is freaky
I
in
happen
itself.
to think they're great. I mean, it's a bit of you get what you put in.
Yep.
So indeed, the data is already great, but if you can ask um, questions that are thoughtful about data that you see in front of you, you're going to get a thoughtful response, and that
Hmm.
really then helps build on credibility of the data as well. So it's not enough just to give people access to data. That was kind of that first barrier we're talking about as far as
Yes.
problems, making sure that everyone has access, democratizing access to the data.
Hmm.
But then what do you do with it once you see it? You might have this is a little bit cleaner, a lot of white space spread out, but you might be faced with a very large spreadsheet and it's like, okay, well, I don't want to have to be hunting through rows and columns, tracing things on my screen to find insights that are actually actionable.
Hmm.
So this takes that step for you. And this is already if you knew that there existed a piece of content that you wanted to check and you wanted to be able to ask conversations. So this is more already doing the lift of taking data that might sit out there and pick up and organizing it in a way that becomes more palatable.
Yep.
But you very likely could be in a situation where you want to ask an ad hoc question. And that ad hoc question, oftentimes, at least in my past, I had to pulled up a giant spreadsheet again and then start tracing my finger across to see, say, the production for a particular campaign. And if I
Hmm.
got that, I wouldn't necessarily see how that campaign was performing across the entire portfolio. When I was overseeing a few properties, I would actually have to run that independently across the three in different systems and throw them together again in a pivot table to be able to get answers to something that I might just wanting to be running once. And the
Yep.
amount of effort it would expend to do something like that was painful at the most positive. Few other words came to mind during the exercise.
Yeah. I could imagine. And so,
So,
go on.
yeah.
No, go on.
Oh, I should say, so I mean, what I would have loved to have been able to do is just be able to ask a really simple question, and perhaps I might be able to copy and paste just to save everyone time from typing like you had to see before, is actually ask, okay, we have this package rate and this is running across all of our properties. How is it performing? Like we were
Hmm.
talking about before, it wants
Yep.
to ascertain some clarifying questions. So I'm going to say rate plan. I'm going to say across all KPIs because to qualify my answer about performance, I actually want to have units as well as revenue. And I'm going to say, sure, both. And from here, I should be able to get a pretty straightforward answer as far as the value for this. And it'll show some flexibility in seeing, I just typed in package. When I look it up, it looks up the actual rate plan name. I was saying my weekend package,
Okay.
and then it's going to spit out my production. And this would tell me pretty much what I wanted to know without having to run through all these different exercises. It can just do it for me, which
I
is
mean,
really
that's
nice.
so time saving, isn't it? I mean, it's.
Time saving and just a lot less painful.
Hmm.
It got to the point where I might be sitting in my office and you knew the footsteps of certain people who were going to ask a question that you knew was going to require you to pull an analysis together and derail you for about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And you knew that it's not as though you could create some kind of framework where you could run this analysis and then it's going to just be continuous and then you can set up something to save you time and be efficient moving on. It's going to be the one time you run it and then you've lost 2 hours you can't get back to give
Yeah.
someone an answer that they go say, okay, great. And they've already
They
mentally
go.
moved on
Yeah.
and you just sit there and you sigh. Um, so this would actually be able to get it to you in, I mean, what was that, less than 30 seconds,
Yeah. Absolutely.
which is fantastic. And but perhaps this campaign is long running and you actually do want to create something that would be repeated, then you can actually just convert it into a spreadsheet from here. So you actually can select, okay, I want to have that
Oh,
view.
really?
I don't
Right.
necessarily
Okay.
need to have that view.
Yeah.
I'm going to translate that into a dashboard. And perhaps I want to have a table on top of that. So then I might go into my chart, duplicate it, create a table, add another summary. We've got a few different pieces you can essentially do. Get a little bit more careful in your naming. My chart's going to be a table with all of the data. And essentially in a few clicks, you've got your new spreadsheet. I'm going to hide the ugly titles and I'm going to create a little subtitle written by AI. It's going to give it just a little bit of a header here to explain the data I'm looking at. And then from there, just add a filter. Let's say I want to see it for the entire portfolio, but perhaps I also want to empower when I'm sending this out to individual property level users. Perhaps they want to look at a specific property. Now they've got a property filter.
So let me just, so we've gone from here's a set of data, here's a way it's presented, into then actually utilizing the AI assistant as a tool in itself to be asking a question. Then you're able to take the answer that you've been provided and build together your own report and a dashboard that you can then share with other people for them to be able to access it. Did I follow all that logically?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have it published now to my share screen. This can be a little bit trickier to hit publish. There we go. That I have it shared in my personal sandbox. That way, if I need to make any
Yeah, yeah,
refinements, I can do that. But as
yeah,
soon as I want to share it out to anyone else, then it's just a matter of
right.
sharing it with the people there, or perhaps I want to move it into our shared
More
drive. I
like a
can move it
document.
into my
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
organizational folder.
yeah.
But really, what it ends up coming down to is if I'm going to check this on a cyclical basis, then you can just schedule the email to be sent on a daily or perhaps weekly. I'm going to send it out to myself for the
So that
data
would
people
just
out there.
repeat. Right. Okay. Interesting.
So yeah, hi team. Check out the package production for this year. Have a look and enjoy for people who can spell properly. And I'll say weekend package production. Again, this is only really relevant, and I try and caution people with this. Don't send things to people just to send things to
No, no,
people.
no. Of course.
And you don't even have to create dashboards all the time just to create dashboards. Save everyone some time. If you just want to ask a question, it's a one off experience. Use the AI assistant. If you know that it's going to be something you're going to repeatedly be checking, then also save yourself
Just
some
yeah.
time and create the framework for that. We've already seen that you can create kind of a repository of visualizations and data to streamline conversations you might be asking. So that way it provides the context for you,
Hmm.
but also it gives you this frame of reference as well. So there are so many different ways depending on who you are within the organization, but also what type of workflows you have in place that we can support and pretty fluidly navigate through each of those all within the product.
Is there anything else you want to show us, or should we bring you back into full screen
Yeah, I think we can do full screen. There's always so much more to show, but um, let's keep that where it is. We can. I'm more than happy to show more for anyone else who's interested,
Yeah,
but
we'll make sure
that's
they
enough
have
of a teaser.
yeah, we'll have make sure they have a way of reaching out to connect, and then
That would be
if
great.
they need to see more, that would be obviously no problem at all. So just, I mean, one of the things that struck me is how you now actually have a real conduit through that AI assistant to be able to ask those questions, but it's not just about data and questions anymore. It's really about getting to the answers, and then the ability to then, once you see that answer, to refine and ask those follow-up questions. I can't think of an appropriate phrase. It's not that it's intuitive. Obviously, it's intuitive, but it's just so many tools you find present something to you, and then I kind of feel I'd be writing down questions, then I'd have to go in and find a way of answering that question to myself. Whereas here I've got a way of interacting that will just summarize that answer for me. I mean, that's what really struck me from all of that.
Absolutely. AI is another tool or piece of technology, just like uh, anything is that we're interacting with now across products. And to treat it purely as hype and to embed it in places it doesn't make sense, quite frankly, is not a great idea at the best of times, and it's harmful at the worst of times
Hmm.
because it can be a bit of a switch off. What we've consciously done is understand where are those points of friction, like we were talking about. That could be translating analysis into alignment. It can be
Hmm.
translating analysis into insights or translating analysis into an evolving strategy.
Hmm.
And each of those were points of friction. And we say, well, how do we make that a little bit more seamless? And AI through natural language in this case, um, makes it just much more, like you said, intuitive because it's like speaking to another human. So it's just breaking down those barriers of thinking the way that people were already thinking. So it's already simulating that experience. And it's like having another person that's more dedicated to helping you do what you were already going to do,
Yep.
but arguably, potentially better, but certainly quicker and faster. And you also mentioned it as well. It's also just fun to interact with. I'm
Yeah,
a firm
it
believer
did
in if
seem
you
fun.
enjoy, yeah, if you
Yeah.
enjoy what you're doing on a daily basis, whether that be the role, your responsibilities, your stakeholders, but also the products you use, if you enjoy working with them and they give you reliable and good quality returns, then you'll keep wanting to use it.
Hmm.
And that's exactly what we wanted to create. So we don't want to plug in AI as a tool or a piece of technology in places it doesn't make sense. We want to put it in places where naturally you're going to gravitate towards accomplishing and doing certain things. This just plugs in and connects the dots in such a way that ideally you don't even feel like you're interacting with AI per se. I think that'll probably end up becoming even terminology of the past. It's just going to be what you do.
Yeah. And I think the ability for different people in different roles with their own style and way of questioning to be able to just interact with a simple assistant, phrase the question in they want, get the summary, refine it if they need to, but then knowing that when they then go and have a conversation with their colleague in another team or department, they're they're all looking, they may have asked the question in a different way, but they're all looking at the same data, and deep data. So it's of the moment, it's a single source of data. They can ask it into some detail, and I just feel that could just generate so much time seems to be spent asking questions to get the information out, and then there's
Yes.
less time to be able to spend on, well, what are we doing about it, what's it telling us, how do we feel about that? Whereas now it's a real chance because both people in different departments can go in and analyze it, and come and talk at this from exactly the same point, and really start to get into, well, what did you take from it, what do we take from it, how does that validate, and just move to that next step rather than it just be an analysis discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. The funnel doesn't change. You all still always want to go from data to analysis to understanding, action, and then basically monitoring. And all of that is in the shape of trying to drive your commercial strategy. So nothing about that changes. But exactly to your point, you have different people and different stakeholder groups, and we all think slightly differently, or the way that we tackle things might be slightly differently within that general funnel or those general ambitions. And so that's type of our product and the type of technology that we've embedded within it is able to speak to the flexibility that is required of all of these teams and the needs and the questions that are slightly nuanced across everybody who's interacting, and be able to address all of those on an even playing field. So we're not
Hmm.
playing to just one person or one stakeholder group. It really can be for all, with the greater ambition of alignment,
Yep.
because I mean, doesn't matter which industry you're in. If you have a bunch of different teams that are to a certain extent working in silos, you need to have that alignment to ensure that you're realizing your strategy.
Yep.
And so being able to speak to the same data points that you're looking at and be able to have data driven conversations where everybody can reference the same data, but in the method and in the way that feels natural to them.
Yep.
I mean, it's for us, it's been a no brainer. It's
Yeah, I
what
can
the market
imagine.
has needed. And we've been so happy to be able to realize that for people.
And also the fact that you can do it on property, but then also across the property portfolio, and be able to distinguish between them if you need to, and get into that level as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was very interesting. Thank you so much. Any final point? I'm conscious of your time. Any final points or anything that we haven't touched on that you wanted to convey, or have we got across all the elements that you wanted for this discussion?
Yeah, I mean, again, there's always more that you can say, but no, I think I would just find a lot of these pieces I've mentioned, but our kind of final vision mission that we try to accomplish within our team when we're working on refining the product and optimizing the product is that we really want to enable hotel teams to seamlessly translate analysis into these aligned priorities and to an evolving strategy that every team within the organization will have.
Perfect. great way to end it. Thank you so much. Really appreciated you not only sharing the pain points that you had seen, but more importantly, then outlining a solution that goes straight to the heart of trying to resolve some of those. It's absolutely imperative in the current climate that exists. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share it with us. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, Trevor. It's been a pleasure. A wonderful afternoon. A nice break and interlude.
Indeed. You take care.